She's saying that what is like her, she had a recent article where she said they overestimated the amount of people that actually died from COVID. And I think she said the real number is about 30% of what they're claiming.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, wow.
Because when you die of COVID, if you also have cancer, if you're dying of something else, but you test positive for COVID, they call it a COVID death.
They call it a COVID death.
Yes.
I remember reading that.
Like even accidents and even people that because there was a financial incentive.
Yeah.
Which is part of the problem. Dr. Lena Wen slammed after admitted there's been an overcounting of COVID deaths 2.5 years late. Wen claimed the actual COVID-19 death could be only 30% of what's currently reported. There's also been, I don't know how the system exactly works, but there's been doctors that explained what incentive there is to put someone on a ventilator, what incentive there is to prescribe remdesivir.
Because it's all financial decisions, right? Yeah.
Because of the emergency use authorization, because of the pandemic, there's all these. And when you have money involved, things get fucking squirrely.
Always.
They get real weird. And,
Always.
And then I didn't realize, I'm so ignorant, I didn't know that most hospitals, or a large number of hospitals, are privately owned. They're businesses.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute.
I thought
where's this money coming from?
Something that the government funds so that we all take care of each other.
Not here, not in this country.
No.
Yeah,
and then you have the fact that pharmaceutical companies are responsible for 75% of the ads on television.
Really?
Yes.
75%?
75% of the ads on television. We're one of 2 countries on Earth that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise.
I had no idea.
The other one is New Zealand, and they're far more restrictive than we are.
And
so you have so much financial
incentive.
And then we lost people in terms of losing their mind and their anxiety that never came back.
Yeah.
I just saw an article today about how I think it's time to mask up at award shows again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see if you can find that. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's a cold.
Right.
It's basically gotten down to a cold
To the
now.
point, it's become so benign to human beings.
If you're that vulnerable, you shouldn't be going to the award show.
In the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're not healthy,
Right.
And also,
right. Just make smart choices, right? Protect yourself. Stay back.
And there's still, after all these years, no encouraging people to take vitamin D, no encouraging people to lose weight, no encouraging people to take care of their overall metabolic health so that they'll have a more robust immune system and they can survive these things. No, nothing. Nothing.
Nope. No, almost the opposite. I would say junk food's more prevalent than ever and pushing, that whole. Fucking Lucky Charms, right?
Yeah, the Lucky Charms thing. It might be time to mask up at award show. It might be time to stop your fucking award shows. How about that? Nobody likes them. You guys like them. We don't even like them. We watch them because there's nothing else on. The kind of people that really like award shows, they wish they were there. I wish I was getting that award.
I don't think, do they even televise them anymore? I don't even see them anymore.
They televise the Oscars.
Yeah. Well, I remember when that was a big thing. You sit around and watch the Oscars. I don't think I even heard the last time there was an Oscars.
Yeah, you heard when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
I did see that.
That's it.
Yeah, I did see that.
That was the last fucking dying breath of the Oscars, I think.
Yeah.
It can't be so
interesting.
About that stuff. A mask. They don't work. That's the other thing. It's the other thing Lena Wen said. The cloth masks are essentially facial coverings. She didn't say that at the beginning of the pandemic, but she said it recently.
Interesting.
On CNN, they're like,
oh, they must have been very upset.
What?
Yeah.
Well, I think she's realizing that her reputation is at stake.
I see.
And she's got to actually report real facts.
Yeah.
And so that, and also the writing on the wall. When we're looking back at this from 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we're looking at adverse reactions and we're looking at all these different things and what we did to kids, how we stunted their development by masking everybody and keeping them at home. The whole thing's nuts. And it was a very mild pandemic in terms of the Spanish
what it could have
flu
been.
and the Black Plague and the horrific pandemics of the past.
Right.
Yeah.
Very true. One of my best friends sadly passed away during COVID in a rock climbing accident. Not from COVID, but when he went to the hospital, he was climbing in Utah, fell without his helmet, and did his skull in, and it was terrible. Tommy Dutra, he was one of my best friends, amazing guy, incredible athlete. Anyway, he went to the hospital, and his dad called all of us, right, all of his close friends and his family and everything else, Nobody was allowed in the hospital. His own parents had to say goodbye to him over Zoom when they pulled the plug.
Oh, God.
All of it. And it was right during the height of it all. And because he was getting out and climbing and doing something active during the pandemic, when everybody else was sitting inside, his own fault for not wearing his helmet, so on and so forth. But terrible tragedy. But just imagine not being able to say goodbye to your son in that situation because of that whole heightened, like we were talking about the heightened fear thing, right? The heightened hysteria.
Like if it wasn't even COVID positive, it doesn't even make sense.
But they weren't allowed in the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So, I mean, there's two tragedies simultaneously, right? The big one's that he died hitting his head.
Of course,
climbing.
of course, yeah.
What a way to go. Ooh.
Yeah, poor guy.
God.
But he died doing what he loved, though. He was an incredible climber and very passionate about it. So,
Yeah, I talked to Gabor Mate about that, who's an expert in addictions and trauma, and he thinks that people that are drawn to like free solo climbing, like the Alex Honnold's types of the world,
the addiction of the adrenaline. Yeah,
he's like, there's something wrong with the way they developed, and they're muted. And like maybe because of so much persistent trauma when they were young, that they need some. I forget exactly how he described it, but that this is a reaction to trauma, like youthful trauma.
So they're putting themselves in trauma's way or harm's way to compensate for something that's happened historically.
They're putting themselves in trauma's way because that's the only way they feel things.
Yeah, I mean,
or that's the only way they feel alive. Like they get this. I don't know how you feel what someone else feels.
Right.
Like, how would you
How do you
really
answer
know?
that? Yeah, right. I mean, I can sort of understand that in a sense of like, I'm not an adrenaline junkie. Like, I don't go for skydives or, any of that stuff. It doesn't drive me. But that thrill and rush I get of, darting a bear or working with a lion or doing, swimming with an anaconda, like that fuels me for weeks. Like I get getting goosebumps thinking about some of them right now because I get so excited by. And it's not just for a personal rush, but rather, we're doing it for work or whatever. But those moments stick with me forever. And I sort of get that, but not like I'm just going to risk my life over this climb or whatever, So
what are
it's
your
sort
thoughts
of different.
on giant anacondas? Like, because there's always been this thing about enormous anacondas that live in the rainforest.
So, yeah, there's fascinating. So I love anacondas. I believe, and I've got a colleague, Brian Fry, in Australia, actually, and he has a similar belief that there are 30-foot anacondas. Now, 30 is a big anaconda, but you're talking about those mysterious, like 50, 100-footers.
Yeah.
Okay, so take out the Amazon and take out anacondas for a second.
Okay.
All right? Think about where all the largest snakes are in the world. Okay?
Florida.
Well, now, yes. But, we've got all these wet tropical environments that house these huge snakes. In Indonesia, you have reticulated pythons. You have Burmese pythons. You have African rock pythons, Indian rock pythons, anacondas, all these big snakes.
Yeah.
The only place that has a wet, tropical, humid, high density of prey environment that doesn't have a massive snake is the Congo, Central Africa. Now,
Interesting.
Stay with me. That area is home to some African rock python stuff, but not big monster anaconda size ones, right? But during World War II, there was a colonel who flew over there, and this was a well-respected colonel. I'm sure, Jamie, you'll be able to find this very quickly. A well-respected, like, I forget, he had like his wings or his patch of honor or whatever, like very distinguished, who him and his two passengers in the plane both reported a 100-foot-long snake. They flew over it once. They're like, wait a minute, what is that? They were Dutch Belgium in the Congo. They flew over it once, went, what is that? And flew over it 2 more times to verify it and got so low to the ground that they said the snake struck at the airplane. And all 3 people, the pilot, this well-respected colonel, and the 2 passengers, had the exact same story of this giant snake in Central Africa.
Interesting.
Yeah, and yet no big snake has ever been proven from there. But it's also a very poorly biologically explored area. And most of the time, when these animals get this big, snakes or otherwise, they're in very low... Yeah, here's the picture.
They took a photo of it?
They did. Yeah, they did. They're in very low densities. So that's the real photo over on the left there.
What did they think it was?
They thought it was a giant snake, a 50-foot long...
So that's the photo right there?
I believe so. But the story's fascinating of these kernels.
But they don't know like what kind of snake. They don't know if it was an anaconda or a python or.
It would be an undescribed species because the only snake there, the African rock python, doesn't get that big.
What is the biggest snake that we know? Oh, it says it measured approximately 50 feet in length. Saw brown-green with a white belly, has a triangle-shaped jaw and a head 3 by 2 feet. Oh, my God. A 3-foot head. The photo was later analyzed and verified to be genuine. Van Leerd claims that, is that how you say his name?
I'm not sure, but that was the Colonel, Remy Van Leerd.
As he flew lower for a closer inspection, the snake rose up approximately 10 feet, giving a warning that it would have attacked a helicopter if it had been within striking range.
But imagine flying over and having a snake sort of lunge at a helicopter.
Imagine a 3-foot snake head. Jesus Christ.
Jamie, do you mind going to my Instagram
Literally
quickly?
Swallow you alive,
Dude,
easily.
look at this one. I posted a picture day before yesterday. This is 18 feet, and look at the size of it compared to me and how scary this snake is. Now, to think of, like you said, you're like an M&M to a snake that
You're
size.
a Tic Tac. You're one of them chocolate-covered almonds that are so good for you.
Yeah.
Whoa, look at the size of that thing.
That's an 18-footer. And look at how,
God.
Granted, it's not 3 foot by 2 foot head, but still, that thing,
What's the weight on something like that?
It was over 200. It broke our scale.
Wow.
Yeah, it was over 200 pounds.
Wow. Indonesian villagers claim to have captured a python that is almost 49 feet long and weighs nearly 990 pounds.
I've seen this. It's not verified at all.
Do they have an image of it?
This might be the one that's on the tractor. No, it's not. There's a fake one on a tractor that
it's fake?
Floated around. Well, it's just very forced perspective. It's like a wide-angle lens, and the snake is right in front, but it looks massive.
But this is NBC. This is NBC News. Let's see if it has images of this sucker.
So these are all like retics, and there are big snakes out there.
Look at the size of that goddamn thing.
Yeah.
Jesus. So, what is the biggest snake? Is it a python, the biggest snake that we know of?
So the heaviest is the reticulated python.
Look at the size of that thing.
Yeah.
How big is that?
That's big. It's probably 20-ish. So there's quite a lot of 20-foot snakes out there. And then there's a couple 21, 22s, but that's it. And so there's all these rumors of 30-foot snakes and 40-foot snakes and blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing that's been verified outside of one skin, I believe, I want to say from Indonesia, that is but skin stretch. That's the other thing,
it turns out to be a tall tale. It says when recreation park in Indonesia put a huge reticulated python on show last week, keepers insisted to reporters it was 49 feet long, making it the longest ever caught, but the find turned out to be a tall tale.
Yeah.
So how big was it exactly?
I bet it was 20-ish. 21, there it is.
Yeah. 21 feet. Still fucking crazy.
It's a big snake, man.
But not 50.
Not 50.
I have no idea why the snake has shrunk, said one keeper when asked about the discrepancy as the snake lounged on a tree branch inside the cave. But things do shrivel up when you catch them. Yeah. Like fish do. Like when you catch a fish. Yeah.
Well, definitely when you tell people about it. But
it's when you show people.
Yeah.
I went fishing here in Austin this morning.
Oh, did you really?
Right downtown. Literally right in front of the Google building. We were pulling Lady Bird Lake.
Yeah,
pulling
there's a lot of bass out there.
It was awesome, man.
Yeah, it's a great little spot.
Yeah, really fun.
Right in front of the Google building. That's
right
funny.
in front of it, yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest in the world is the python, right? So they're bigger than anacondas?
So it's sort of a toss-up. The reticulated python has been clocked as the heaviest snake in the world because they get fatter, but the anacondas have been clocked in slightly longer. I think 26 feet is the longest ever recorded.
Did you ever see the Jennifer Lopez movie, Anaconda?
Yeah. The documentary? Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
It's such a corny movie,
It's
man.
so good. The bad, snake head, if you watch it
so
today.
Bad.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. But that was always the rumor, is that there was enormous snakes in the Amazon.
Yeah.
And that, you just didn't see them.
I do believe that there are some megafauna out there that are yet to be found, that are in low populations.
Like you believe in the sloth, the giant sloth.
I believe that has and again, that's like the thylacine. It's a proven animal. It's been 10,000 years, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't be extant in certain remote areas. Same with some of these big snakes. Maybe not 50, because maybe these things are embellished, but maybe 30, maybe 35, right? And I just think that there are a few, not a lot, of these big things out there. If you're one of these uncontacted Amazonian tribes, of which there are still several, West Papuan tribes, whatever, and you're seeing a 50-foot snake, nobody in the Western world, we're not hearing about that.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
those things can be happening and those stories get embellished and passed on and all of that, but we wouldn't even know until Western science gets in there. And it's sort of a double-edged sword because once it does, it sort of ruins certain aspects of that, right? So, but I do believe that there are big animals to be found still.
And the sloth one, I watched a documentary on it once. It was this guy who was like risking his reputation. He was a biologist, and he had spent months in the Amazon. He was very frustrated,
Yeah.
because he couldn't find anything, and they kept saying, "We saw it, we saw
Yeah.
it," and he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Where?"
I know that feeling well, and it's very frustrating because, you know, like I've even had people tell me they've eaten the thing that I'm looking for.
Really?
You know, yeah, when we were doing Extinct, you know, looking for the extinct animals, of which we had success quite a lot, but I've had guys be like, "Oh yeah, they're delicious." I'm like,
What?
well, like, tell me where to find it. Like, you've eaten it, and you have no reason to lie about this whatsoever. Like, please just help me.
What was this that they had said?
That
they'd
was
eaten?
regarding that caiman. Remember that yellow caiman?
Yeah.
And we did find them, so that worked out. But literally, I remember we're walking through the village in day one before we even get in the canoes, and I'm like showing people these pictures of all the different species of caiman, and I kept pointing to the Trompa largo amarillo, the long-nosed yellow one, right? And everybody's like, yes, no, maybe, one time. And then one guy's like, oh, those are delicious. And I'm like, oh, God, like, can we put this on Animal Planet? I don't even know. Like, I don't, can you say that this thing is delicious?
Endangered species
Yeah.
that you're eating. Well, there was always these rumors of like these places where these billionaires would fly into in China and eat like gorilla.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know, have you ever heard of that kind
Oh,
of
yeah,
stuff?
I've heard about it. I believe it, too.
Do you?
I really do, yeah. I think that especially, you know, you're saying, like, especially with China where the Eastern medicine and the status symbol of eating tiger whiskers and this, that, and the other thing.
There's a status symbol of eating something that's forbidden and
Right.
very difficult to acquire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, China has so many billionaires now. I forget what it is, but dozens and dozens of them, right? Like, if that status symbol is important to someone with that much power and money, how are you not getting it?
Yeah, what a weird culture where your status is based on eating something that's endangered.
It doesn't even click in my head. Like, I cannot
So
physically
strange.
understand it. Like, no part of me is like, oh, I get that. Like, I really want to eat some tiger whiskers.
Have we ever talked about the Bondo ape?
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you
Yeah.
like the Bondo ape a lot. Yeah. Big lion-killing apes,
Well,
right?
this is a big chimpanzee that
Chimp, yeah.
lives in the Congo.
Yeah.
Which is, the Congo is so incredible. It's like, God, what an insanely rich, resource-ridden
Yeah.
place that's also a war zone.
And being absolutely raped and pillaged by, you know, big corporations in the Western world for resources and
Yes.
minerals and
I had Siddharth Kara on, who I think his book comes out. Does it come out next week? It comes out the end of January.
okay.
But his book is all about cobalt mining in the
Oh,
Congo,
interesting.
and it's horrifying.
I do want to read it. Yeah.
Horrifying. 19-year-old girls with babies on their back
Oh, yeah.
who are hand chipping cobalt
Yep.
out of the ground and then inhaling all these toxic fumes and,
Yeah.
and powder, this dust, and then that is in your cell phone.
Right.
That's how the cobalt
Yep.
gets into your fucking cell phone.
That's at your Apple store.
Nuts.
It's the new blood diamond,
Yes.
right? It's the new, and it's funny because I feel like the whole blood diamond thing, and you know, there's been lots of these things, but it all sort of went away because it got exposed. But I feel like no one's talking about the inhumane things that are taking place for our modern conveniences. It's one thing when it's a luxury, like a blood diamond, right?
Right.
Or whatever. But when it's like, oh, well, I can't live without my iPhone, you know, then it's like we're willing to turn a blind eye to it. It's like people
Yeah.
choose not to accept it because it's part of their life.
Just think about how many people who consider themselves social justice warriors, and they do this complaining on a phone that's made by slaves.
Totally. Yeah.
So
they're
crazy.
they're literally tweeting or texting or whatever
Yeah.
their complaints on a thing that is contributing to the thing they're complaining about.
They're contributing to the worst version of it
Right.
in humanity right now.
Isn't it
which
crazy?
Is really crazy. I mean, it's like literally human trafficking.
So in the book, does he actually go into the Congo and witness
Yes.
this? And
Oh yeah, he took video footage. He
Oh, you're
came
kidding.
on. His story is so compelling.
Oh, I must listen
It's
to it.
so and he talks about it with such passion because he worked on this for years and years.
Yeah.
And risked his life to obtain footage and to get access, and to go to these what they're supposedly ethical mines.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is all horrible. It goes, all of it is tainted.
Yeah.
All the cobalt that we have, all of it is at least in some part coming from these, what they would call. I mean, it's basically just the most primitive version. People in flip flops with hammers.
Yeah.
Chipping it out of the ground.
What's extreme poverty?
Yes.
Right. And
it's more like slavery.
It is.
Calling it extreme poverty, I think, is not quite accurate enough. They call them artisanal mines, which is like hilarious because it's like
anytime you slap that word onto anything, it's fun.
Oh,
right?
It's artisanal.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I think someone's making pottery somewhere.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
So back to the Bondo ape.
Sure.
Is that because I know there was some controversy behind that, and there's some people that sort of denied its existence, but then Carl Armand got photographs of them, and they obtained skulls that were a chimpanzee skull that had a crest.
Enlarged. Yeah.
But they also had a crest, like the same way that a gorilla does.
My understanding, and this is not something I'm super familiar with, but there's no denying that they existed. Right? There was this insular gigantism that took place within this group of chimpanzees. There was heightened aggression. That's all like known and documented. But it wasn't a new species. It wasn't a distinct species. It was sexual or rather natural selection that led to these animals being different and isolated and turning into larger, more aggressive chimpanzees. That's my understanding of it.
But would that also make their skulls different?
It can do,
because oddly enough, we have a skull.
Yeah,
of a
it's very cool.
This is made by Shane Against the Machine, who's a guy on Instagram who's an incredible artist.
Cool.
He's made a couple of pieces for the podcast too.
Oh, rad.
The difference is with this skull versus what they think the Bondo ape skull is, that the Bondo ape has like a bone mohawk
right
down
through
the
here.
center.
Yeah,
like a gorilla does.
Sure. So, sexual selection over time can evolve for anything, can adapt for anything, right? That's why peacocks have the silly tail they have. It doesn't help them fly, right? It's only sexual selection. It's being bred for. So you get a bunch of chimps stuck on an island, stuck in a region, and the females decide for whatever reason that a bump on the head is sexy. Okay? Now, every chimp that has a slight bump on its head is being selected for by the females to reproduce offspring. Fast forward 15, 20 generations, maybe 200 generations, whatever, they all have a crest on their head. That is how evolution begins, because now you fast forward millions of years and the sexual selection has been selected for over and over and over and over, and you're starting to turn into a new creature, a new organism altogether.
If I'm not, I don't think I'm incorrect here. I think the crest indicates enormous mandible muscles.
Because the muscles attach up there.
Yeah, I think
Makes
that's
sense.
what the crest is for.
Yeah.
Because that's how it is with dogs.
Sure.
Like, have you ever noticed the difference between a dog that's castrated and a dog that's not fixed?
In temperament, sure.
The size of their heads.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Like, my dog is a golden retriever,
Yeah.
the sweetest dog in the world.
Yeah.
But he has a pretty big head.
Yeah.
And it's the muscles in his head are big.
Sure.
Like on the sides of his head, because he has his testosterone.
Sure.
Whereas we met this other golden retriever that was fixed, and he has this narrow little tiny head.
Sure.
And it's because he doesn't have any muscles.
So that's the difference of sexual selection, like the peacock or what I explained, and natural selection. So if these Bondo apes are only eating, and I'm just making this up, and I know the theories of them killing lions and everything, but if they're only eating coconuts, let's say, right?
And they have to tear them apart.
They have to rip through a coconut with strong jaws.
Right.
Well, if you got weak jaws or weak jaw muscles or weak mandibles, whatever, you're going to die.
Right.
So over time, again, the only ones that are surviving are the ones that have this ridge on their head that are naturally being selected for stronger muscles.
Yeah.
So
they
just
just
a
think
different
it's
mechanism.
like a subspecies of chimp?
That's my understanding of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had thought. That
Yeah.
They don't think it's a different chimp, but they do think it's different in terms of its size and temperament.
And we see that all the time, right? We see
Right.
insular dwarfism where things are stuck on an island and they get smaller and smaller because of the
Yeah.
lack of resources, or gigantism for the opposite reason. Like, we see that all the time within species.
Or people that live in Iceland. Enormous, giant fucking people
Big
used
dudes.
to be Vikings.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know how
And
many world strongman champions have come from Iceland?
No, all of them.
Shitload of
Yeah.
them. They're all like that guy, the mountain from Game of
I
Thrones.
was just gonna ask you: is he from Iceland? He's from somewhere up there.
I think he is.
Yeah.
Is he from Iceland? Well, his name is from Iceland.
Thor.
It's like Thor Hafhorsson.
Exactly. Yeah.
Try saying his fucking name. But I mean, that part of the world has produced an exorbitant number. Look at the size of that fucker.
Yeah.
Iceland.
Look at that name though.
Yeah. Yeah. Look
Julius
at that name.
Bjornsson.
I
Bjornsson.
mean, first of all, they're not even using real letters.
No.
What's that thing after the F?
I have no
in his
idea.
name. That's like a half a P, a half a B.
A Bjorblor.
Hafthor. Hafthor. Oh, it's literally transliterated as Hafthor in English. Yeah.
Crazy. That's a different species. I'm sorry. That's a different species right there.
Exactly. Look at the size of that fucker.
Look at that guy.
How big is that fucker?
Was he 6'9" or something? But then his weight is astronomical.
What?
Is he more than
does
that?
it say his height?
6'8". I see it there.
Okay,
203
6'8".
centimeters.
Which, like, Shaquille O'Neal's looking
Oh, no,
down on that
6'9".
dude going, come on, bitch.
Yeah.
He's 7'1".
230. He's got to be more than that now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's nonsense.
Nonsense. No, that's not true at all.
Each of his
when he played
quads
basketball,
weighs
he was
that.
big.
Oh, maybe when he was 16.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
then.
Yeah, it's when he started basketball. He started at 230. That's
Oh, he's got it. Well, I think he
308.
got really heavy,
6'9",
20.
but then he
463.
he
There it
slimmed
was.
463. Okay, but then he slimmed down to have a boxing match. He had a boxing match with Eddie Hall.
Did he win?
Yeah, he won.
Did he?
Actually looked really good.
Yeah?
It showed really good technique too. Like
Huh.
it wasn't like winging punches. He was like fighting like a boxer.
I mean,
Like trained for a long time for it.
I cannot imagine taking a hit from a guy like that.
Oh my
no
god!
matter who
Can
you are.
imagine the
Yeah.
size of his fucking mitts.
The momentum,
Yeah.
like coming into that.
Yeah, just the sheer gravity behind each punch. Boom. But it is fascinating how people in that part of the world, I mean, they were the Vikings.
Yeah.
That's why they're so fucking giant.
That's where they've come from.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So I wanted to talk to you about this cloning and the rewilding of the mammoths and all of that
Yes,
stuff. I'm going to
yes.
Colossal tomorrow to learn a little bit more about
Explain
it myself.
Colossal.
Yeah, so Colossal Biosciences is this, if you ask me, incredible company, and they are, by their own declaration, a de-extinction company. So it's this guy, Ben Lamb, and he's got George Church, who's a world-leading cellular scientist. I don't know the specifics, of de-extinction and cloning and CRISPR and so on and so forth. And they've come together and raised a ton of money, and they are de-extincting animals. And the science is there. Like, it's done. All it took was the money, basically, behind it. And they've put together this incredible Rolodex of scientists and people, and it's real-life Jurassic Park with purpose.
Where are they going to put them?
So there's a couple different things going on. So the first one they're working on is the woolly mammoth, right? And this isn't just for fun. This has real, like, important conservation implications, which is really fascinating. But they are planning on starting with, I think, 100 mammoths and putting them in this place called not Pleistocene Park, something like that. This park in Siberia. That they've been doing this experiment on as to what happens when you add megafauna back into the Arctic tundra to offset carbon emissions.
Wow. And so they're using what DNA? They're using elephant DNA and mixing it with something else?
So it's Indian elephant is the closest living relative to the woolly mammoth.
And what does an Indian elephant look like? Is it similar to an elephant?
Yeah, it's a smaller. So African elephants are bigger. They have the really big ears.
Right.
Indian elephants are typically the ones you'd see at the circus, with the pink in the ears, the smaller triangular shaped ears. It's a different species of elephant. And so they're taking Indian elephants and they're using CRISPR technology and they're using existing mammoth DNA and they're making an embryo and then they're implanting it into the Indian elephant. And 22 months later, an Indian elephant's gestation period, she will give birth to a mammoth.
A real mammoth.
A real mammoth.
So it's not like a hybrid?
That's okay. That's a good point. So it is in the sense of what they do is if you imagine the DNA of an animal, right? And then you imagine the fragments that are broken out of it, right? What they're doing is they're taking that DNA and I don't understand the cellular side of it very well. This is just my base level understanding of it. I can talk about the conservation side of it, but they're taking that double helix, that DNA, and all those pieces that are missing from the mammoth, they're putting in Indian elephant pieces. So you end up with an animal that is physically and morphologically identical to a mammoth, but has used all of the DNA from the closest living relatives in order to get there.
Phew. Boy. And this process, how long does this take?
So I think they've been going for about 5 years on the science, but the science of de-extinction and cloning, I mean, you remember Dolly the sheep, right? That was like a known thing. So that's been going on for a long time.
Well, you can get your cat cloned.
Exactly.
Or your dog cloned.
Exactly. For like 20 grand, you can clone your dog. Yeah. So
It's kind of creepy.
It is. It's bizarre. But the point is the science has been there for a while. There just hasn't really been the funding or the motivation for it. But what I think so fascinating, the reason I'm so like emotionally invested in it, is the conservation implications that it has. Because what this company is ultimately doing is rewilding species that humans have removed. And that's going to, in theory, in a lot of places, sort of fix the offset, the imbalance of the ecosystem. That's
interesting. That's really interesting. There's a lot of debate about whether or not humans killed off the woolly mammoth, though, isn't there?
I think there is. Yeah, I think there is. And I can't really speak on that. But I do know that when the mammoths disappeared, so the Arctic used to be like the savannas of Africa. It used to be big grasslands, right? It wasn't all covered in trees and things. And that's a recent adaptation since the mammoths went away 10, 20,000 years ago. And so that's what's happened is the permafrost up there is melting pretty rapidly, right? Underneath that permafrost is like 1.5 trillion tons of carbon. And once that carbon enters the atmosphere, it heats things up like crazy. So by removing those mammoths, and I can explain why the mammoths keep it colder, but by removing those mammoths, it's allowing that permafrost to melt much quicker and release more carbon. So the idea from like a financial standpoint of how they make money is the carbon offset of putting mammoths back into the environment.
How do they make it colder?
So it's a couple different things. It's basically when there's trees and shrubs, they take in more heat, and that heat transfers into the ground. So in this Pleistocene park, this park that they've been doing this experiment in Siberia for a while, they've put in a couple hundred animals that aren't mammoths, right? They've put in ox and reindeer and things like that, and they're knocking trees over with the tractors. And once they knock trees over and they simulate a mammoth knocking the trees and shrubs over, the fleet grazers are able to keep the vegetation from regrowing. So when the vegetation doesn't regrow, you get all this grassland, and the grassland has snowpack. The snowpack gets stomped, so there's no insulation. It reflects more light. It's like 3 or 4 different processes that make the ground, I think on average, it's like 8 degrees colder. So it keeps things more frozen. So once we removed all the megafauna from the Arctic through hunting or maybe other means, regardless, once they were removed, the Arctic got warmer. The Siberia and Alaska got warmer, and so slowly we're getting more and more carbon emissions from up there. But by putting these animals back, and I just love the idea of going up to the Arctic and it looking like the African savanna, right, with all of these incredible animals. But by putting these animals back, it in theory will make the Arctic colder, slow down the melting of the permafrost, which will in turn trap the carbon for longer in the ground.
So they're going to start with the woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
And what other animals are they thinking about doing this to?
So what I know of right now is the woolly mammoth and the thylacine, which is another reason I'm so excited.
So they are going to bring back the thylacine?
Yeah.
And how are they going to do that?
So there's, it used to be the quoll, but now it's an animal called a dunnart that's the closest living relative. And so, thylacines were around pretty recently, right? I mean, we're just looking at video of one. Yeah. So they have really good DNA from the thylacine, and then they're going to use the existing DNA from a dunnart, which is a very small marsupial, put them together, remake the thylacine. The only problem is, my understanding is, they cannot use the dunnart for surrogacy because the dunnarts are like this big. So they have to do an artificial womb and all of that. But yeah, I think the technology is there.
Artificial womb?
Yeah.
This sounds like a fucking horror movie.
Isn't it crazy we're living in this time?
Yeah, it sounds like a horror movie.
But it's so insane. Like, even 3 years ago, if you're like, hey, we're bringing animals back, we're going to put mammoths back in the Arctic, you're like, shut up. Like, go put on your tinfoil hat. Like, it's happening. It's
when
so
are they
crazy.
projecting the first woolly mammoth will be launched?
2024.
What?
Yeah.
Next year?
Next year. End of next year.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And they're going to bring it to Siberia.
And put it in this Pleistocene park where there are all these other animals, and they're going to see how it does. Like, how does it behave? How does it interact with the environment? Does it replace the tractors in the sense of cooling down this little park area? Yeah. It'll be fascinating.
Are they going to do saber-toothed tigers?
I hope so. No, I don't know.
Shit,
I don't know.
That would be incredible. What a wild animal those must have been to look at.
Saber-tooth?
giant teeth.
Yeah.
Like literally hang out of their mouth. And apparently they're so sensitive that they could find jugulars. Like
With those teeth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could feel the pulsating jugular with their teeth.
Just because of the nerve endings in it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Homotherium, right? That's what
I don't know
that
what
genus was called? I don't know. Yeah, and that stuff, like, that's the fun Jurassic Park side of it, right? Like, would I like to see a saber-toothed cat? Yes, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
But the idea that, like, hey, 10 years from now, there's going to be several thousand thylacine back in Tasmania. Facial tumor disease is going to go away. The overabundance of prey is going to disappear.
Facial tumor disease?
Facial tumor disease is a thing that a lot of the animals, and particularly the Tasmanian devils, have in Tasmania. It's herpes on the face. But it comes from an overabundance of prey because the alpha predator, the thylacine, has been knocked out. So if you go drive down a road, yeah, look at it. Poor bastards. It's bad. It's herpes.
God.
It's actual herpes.
Oh my God, it's horrible.
It's horrible.
And that's the Tasmanian tiger, which is
The Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian devil. What a crazy little animal that fucker is.
They're so cool, man.
And the noises they make. Yeah.
Yeah, they're wild.
See if you can find a recording of Tasmanian devil noises.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm just excited because it's like,
It is crazy.
it seems like we live in an alternate universe where these things are real now, which is just so crazy compared to a few years ago.
What does it? Here we go. Look at those little fuckers. They're going mouth to mouth with each other.
If you're camping in Tasmania, which I've done for thylacine searches and stuff, and you hear that, it is the most like blood-curdling, terrifying, and then they're this big. But
Yeah.
you hear this and you're like, something is going to rip me to shreds. And
They
it's
look
just
like a
these
French
little buggers.
bulldog.
Yeah, look at them.
Yeah, they're real cute.
Really cute.
Does anybody ever have them as pets? I wonder if you can domesticate them.
I don't know. But my number one pet's a wombat. Have you ever seen a
wombat?
pet wombat?
No, they have them.
Oh my God, dude.
People have them as pets.
I mean, in Australia, like as rescues and stuff. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know if they're in the pet trade, but I went to a place in South Australia.
Oh,
they're
look
so-
at little
look at that guy.
Tasmanian devil. Oh, look, he's a little puppy. They're adorable.
They are.
So do people, but this is like little tiny babies. Like I wonder what it's. Maybe it's like some animals, like you get to a certain age, you can't really keep them anymore.
I wouldn't think they'd make very good pets. I went to a place in Tasmania where they dragged a wallaby carcass in that had been hit by the road. It was like the cartoon version of piranhas, where they come in and it's like, and they rip it to shreds. These things ripped this dead wallaby to nothing. It was like maybe 10 of them in under a minute.
Really?
Just to nothing, to just bones and gnawing. It was wild to see.
Most people think of the Tasmanian devil as that cartoon.
The
That's
Yeah.
literally if people think about that. It's one of the only animals where the cartoon is more popular than the actual animal.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Like I couldn't pick that animal out of a lineup. If you told
Right.
me, I mean,
What
now
is this?
now I can because I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
But if look at these little. Let me hear some volume.
Wow.
They only weigh about 7 kilos.
Gotta love Australians.
Yeah.
There's also wombat here too.
Little cutie. That's a wombat ear.
Look. This is what I'm talking about.
That's a wombat.
Yeah,
Little
that's a
cutie.
juvenile one, but they're just little trucks.
Aw, little cutie.
I love wombats. I think they're so adorable.
And so
se-
people keep those as pets as adults?
Yes, they do. There was a woman I met who had one in her house. Man, we had this video on our little podcast that I don't know how to find it, but it was hilarious. And this woman hand raised this wombat, and it ran around her house like your dog does. But the thing is, it's like this truck. They're like super low to the ground, huge shoulders, and like if it decided to run like through the dog gate or through the refrigerator, it just went like bowling straight through it. It was amazing.
Cute little guys.
Oh, I think they're so cute. But these guys have unbelievable mange in Tasmania. Like, Jamie, if you type in, wombat mange, we've looked at a lot of gross animal stuff today, but it's brutal. And the reason the mange is so bad, there's no predators and they're way overpopulated. And so when there's that many animals in a small environment with overpopulation, they get diseases. And so,
Oh, look. Ugh.
yeah. So all this is potentially fixable, if you put a predator, the right predator back in Tasmania.
Right. And so that would help Tasmania. And are they
Look at the
planning
second
on
one
doing this
down.
to other continents? Oh, that's terrible.
That's what they look like, though.
Oh,
that
God.
image you saw for a split second there, that's what they, not all, but that's what a ton of them look like in Tasmania with this rampant mage.
Well, that's the chupacabra.
Straight up.
The chupacabra is a coyote
a mangy
that has
coyote.
horrible mange.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've captured them. Like people, we caught a chupacabra.
And it's sitting in a cage, all
It's just
terrified. The
fucked
eyes
up.
are swollen
Yeah.
shut, and
Yeah, it's just a fucked up coyote.
Yep.
The North American mammals, like, are they planning on eventually doing that North American mammals as well and reintroducing some?
I'm not sure. Well, the mammoth would be in Alaska, so that's North America.
They are
yeah.
gonna do it in Alaska.
Siberia all the way to Alaska. So that mammoth steppe environment, those grasslands, used to range from Spain all the way to North America, like all across the Bering Land Bridge, and all that ice was like trampled and blah blah blah. All these savanna lands that are now big forests.
Are you aware of the Alaskan boneyard? Did you watch that?
I heard pieces of it because a couple
Yeah.
people texted me about it, but I need to listen to the whole show. I mean, John sounds like a fascinating guy.
He's the best.
Yeah.
But his place that he has in Alaska, like they've been on, and it's not a big area where he's finding this stuff.
Yeah.
He's got 2 areas, and one of them that he's been getting bones, what he calls boning, this one area for decades,
Yeah.
is only 6 acres.
That's all it is?
Dude, it's nuts. The concentration, so that's what it looks like. It's like the side of a cliff, and they blast it with water until
Yeah.
they see things, and then they pull out
Go
these
dig it out.
bones. But they've found animals that were not supposed to be there.
I remember he said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, like, I believe, so scimitar cats were the cat that was native to that continent, to Alaska, right? Not saber-tooth. Saber-tooth's big teeth, scimitar is like a smaller tooth version. And then he's found saber-tooth skulls
Yes.
on his property.
Yes.
So all of history, all of humans are like, oh no, there's only scimitar cats in Alaska. They were never saber-tooths, and he's found actual saber-tooths.
Yes, and he's
Wild.
only looked in 6 acres.
Can you imagine?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't know what was going on in that area. Like, why
Yeah.
are there so many dead animals?
Yeah.
And why did they all get like frozen into the permafrost?
Into one spot.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
tar pit or who knows.
so I've connected him with Randall Carlson. Look at that.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
That's got to be a saber-tooth,
cave
right?
lion.
Oh, cave
That's
lion.
a cave lion.
Cool.
I don't know if they thought that was there too. So I've connected him with Randall Carlson, or I'm in the process of doing that. And Randall is a proponent of the Younger Dryas impact theory. And the Younger Dryas impact theory is